Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 91st episode of the Inbox. Starting off with a question from Josh Marlowe, who says, do you think 1,000 starting UEC will be enough after seeing some of the prices? I know some things are subject to change, but I can imagine not by a lot. Well, 1,000 1,000 UEC, it's not going to go far, right? But I think that's the overall goal, is that you start small and work your way up. You can buy a bunch of ships, but, even those that are starting off with a whole E, you're not necessarily going to have a lot of starting UEC to be able to fill that up on day one. That being said, I think we get an idea of how things are going to be progressing with the economy that we have today. Because I don't think commodity trading is going to change that much as far as kind of the way you can scale, because it's going to be really hard to balance. And today, I mean, you start with 5,000 UEC or 5,500 UEC, and I think you're able to get up to, higher numbers pretty quick. It's all about having knowledge in what you're doing. Now, some of this is also going to depend, right? Like, if you're going to jump in and start taking on combat missions right away, well, the only thing you need that 1,000 you starting UEC for is repair, refuel, rearming your ship, and that's going to kind of depend on how much that actually costs and what sort of weapons you have on board. If you get in and you want to start with trading, then you just buy, whatever's going to give you the highest profit margin without really wiping yourself out. So maybe you buy 500 UEC and then you work your way back up to 1,500, and then you can put like 1,000 into your next purchase, and then it scales from there. So I would personally like to see that UEC amount be higher. Some packages come with more. I think some of the packages even come with like 20,000 UEC. So I think that a higher number would be better. I actually kind of feel like the 5,500 we're getting now is probably a more realistic number, just because it allows for some mistakes and for, just a little bit more flexibility right out the gate. But it's really more about being smart with the credits. And I think it's going to be important for new players to talk to people that have been playing through alpha, because I think a lot of times people are going to come in and probably just waste all of their money right away, and then they're going to be in kind of like a tough spot. But that's going to happen if somebody has 5,000 UEC too. So maybe that's just a tough lesson learned, that people that aren't kind of paying attention to some of the content that's out there and some of the other people that have been playing, they just may have to learn the hard way, because a lot of people are doing that today anyway. So like I said, I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but I don't think it needs to be drastically higher. Nerf War said, could you use an eye tracker instead of track IR? Because if so, you would be able to aim very accurately with gimbals, depending on the accuracy of the tracker. Technically, yes. I think I've seen people using eye track. And there's been some modifications to some of the other programs out there. I haven't personally ever tried it, but I know that it's something that's coming and it is capable. Now, as far as the actual accuracy with the gimbals, you're right. It's going to depend on the accuracy of the tracker. But it's also going to keep in mind, your eyes can be a little bit twitchy too. Now, it's going to be better than like head track. But, it's going to really just come down to the overall sensor. Are you getting a reflection on your eye? I'm not real qualified to talk about eye tracking, just because I've never done it. But keep in mind too, like with one of the nice things about like head track, for example, is I can turn my head one way to aim my gimbals, but I can look somewhere else with my eyes without moving my head. So I can check, the status of my ship speed or my vector or like what my shields are doing without taking my actual, aim off of target or my gimbals off of the target. So there's some definite downsides to eye tracking too. It's not like it's just because if you look at something, you can hit something. There's a little bit more to it than that. So you come a little bit more, tunnel visioned in that regard. So you got to kind of keep that in mind when it comes to eye tracking. Skliff Rogue says, hey STL, would there be an advantage in the verse if you own Squadron 42? As far as just owning Squadron 42, I don't think there's going to be any advantage at all. As far as potential benefits, we just heard today in Reverse the Verse that you'll actually be able to... after completing the campaign, your account then gets a token that allows you the right to purchase an F8 in the universe if you want to. So that's a definite perk, because a lot of people are interested in getting that Lightning. Outside of that, potentially, maybe we see that your reputation with the military is automatically a little bit better, or with the government. So maybe you end up being able to take on other contracts. Maybe they kind of go this, what's that bug movie? Oh my god, I can't believe I can't think of the name. It's the one with the bugs and the Marines and everything. They have citizens and they have civilians. And you have to earn your citizenship by serving in the military. And then you get different perks, like the ability to vote if you're a citizen over a civilian. So maybe we see something like that. My gut says there's going to be some tie between the two, but I don't think it's going to be anything too drastic. Warblade Zero says, do you think CIG missed a trick on the recent upgrade of the Auroras? Don't get me wrong, I think CIG are doing a fantastic job with the Star Citizen and the ship upgrades. But getting in and out of the Aurora, I think, should be like the Aegis Vanguard Hoplite, where the seat is facing you and spins around to the main console when entering and spin toward doors when exiting. So I don't have an issue with it. I think it's actually kind of a unique piece to the Aurora where you're kind of like sliding around it to get in. I think the idea there is to really play off of the fact that this is a starter ship. It is meant to be very basic. It's meant to be very utilitarian. You know, if you think about it, it's really just, it's almost like a, I don't know, like the cab of like a forklift or something like that. You know, you kind of need to squeeze and get into the right place. So I kind of like it. I think the animation is interesting. It's kind of different. You know, it's not really any slower because, you know, you're waiting on the door to spin around, or the actual chair to spin around in ships that have that feature. Whereas this, you're actually climbing out of it. So no, I think it's kind of cool. I like the animation. I think it really kind of sells the point that it is a starter ship. And it just provides kind of a unique experience that the others don't have. Now, if it had some weird, crappy animation or you just kind of warped into it from where you were standing, then I wouldn't really care for it. But where it is today, I think they found an interesting balance, and I think it kind of fits the lore of the ship. Lassie Hellwig says, what role would you say the Freelancer Miss has now that the Cutlass Black? If you mean the MISC Freelancer, since you put the C on there, I would say it's still got a very good role. It carries more cargo than the Cutlass does. I expect it to have better range than the Cutlass. It's supposed to be a more reliable ship based on the brand. You know, so in that regard, I think it can be a potentially better explorer than the Cutlass can. If you're saying that what role do you think the Freelancer Miss has over the Cutlass Black, they're totally different ships. One's a missile boat that has the capability of firing a ton of missiles. It's got some upgraded weapons. The Cutlass Black is a little bit more of a gunboat than a missile boat, so I think they kind of go about things in a very different way. Freelancer Miss is a little bit more focused on combat. The Cutlass Black focuses a little bit more on everything. It's kind of a jack of all trades. So my gut there says you're talking about the MISC Freelancer, the base Freelancer versus the base Cutlass. And I think they both are just going about similar jobs in different ways where they have different benefits doing different things. You know, the Cutlass is a little bit better at combat. You know, it should be a little bit stealthier ship. It should be cheaper to maintain and faster to get back should it be destroyed. It's better for boarding because it's got the side doors. You know, overall, they're different ships, but they both have a lot of value, I think. Grizzly HP2 says, do you have any comment about the silence around the Freelancer Variants? Ships like the Dur is 4 years overdue, and CIG refuses to answer any questions about it. So recently they actually just said a couple of things. One, on the new roadmap that's available on the website, I actually covered that in the video that probably went up before this one. We can see that they're actually slated for Q4 of this year, which is great because I think the Freelancer Max is going to be a really good ship to have in game. The Dur is obviously going to be nice to have around too, but keep in mind there's not really any exploration components that I saw on the roadmap, so even once the Dur comes in, you're not necessarily going to have a ton to do with it, other than what you can do with the base Freelancer, which you currently have as a loaner. That being said, it was also mentioned in a... I can't even remember who said it, but one of the developers confirmed that they're planning on working on it starting in the second half of this year. So when you combine those two, they probably start working on it halfway through and get them done by the end of the year, something like that. But yeah, they're talking about it now. It's on the roadmap, so it's officially coming. And our last two questions are patron questions, starting off with one from Shepard, who says, in large ships, if you were bored and had a large firefight all up and down the hallways, technically shooting at a wall all day shouldn't destroy the ship at large. Will this be reflected in game? Speaking of the roadmap, they did mention that on the roadmap is a new damage system, and they're going to continue to update that. What that should do is really kind of tap into the item system, and certain things on the ship should end up having different impacts. So if you're talking about shooting some random interior wall in a Starfarer, you know, that shouldn't necessarily do a lot of damage to the ship. It should be more cosmetic. Now, if there's components behind what you're shooting and you do enough damage to blast the covering and you start shooting the component, that should have an impact on the ship in a real way. So I think that sort of thing is going to be coming. I think that's part of the advanced system that they're going to be putting into place. I think it's going to be about what you're shooting and how long you shoot. And if it's just like a wall, no problem. If it's a component panel, problem. And the last question is from Dr. Kessler. He said, assuming any AUEC gets wiped for 3.1, will items and parts we've purchased in-game get wiped also? Yeah, it should. To my knowledge, and I haven't heard them say anything different to this point, Everything that you earn in game that's not tied to your account, i.e. your hanger on the website, is planning on getting wiped. So, like I've earned 3.5 million credits or so in the verse. I've bought a bunch of stuff. I'm not planning on that being around for 3.1. The question is going to be, when do they plan on doing wipes? Like, we may not see a wipe on 3.1 and then a wipe on 3.2 and then a wipe on 3.3. They may say, we're not making any real changes to the economy, so we can get by without doing a wipe on 3.1. I'm counting on them being wiped every time, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But when there is a wipe, it should be your credits and anything that you've earned in the game. So that's it for this episode of The Inbox. If you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more. Take care.